Good morning, second English students. Now we will continue this book, Indian mythology, and see as far as heaven or hell in Hindu mythology is concerned. You know the chart. There is heaven for Vaikunta, Kailasa, and Indra Paloka. Likewise, various heavens we have. Okay, and they are impermanent. Okay, they are not permanent heavens. Even gods also will die one day. Okay, so unlike in Christianity, and when you reach heaven, you will live forever and ever, and such concept is not there in Hinduism. We have various heavens, and based on the karma and which god you pray, you can reach the heaven. And so in heaven also you will not live forever and ever, and in heaven also you will die. Okay, and so in Hinduism, the ultimate aim is reaching moksha. Okay, so reaching moksha is said to be the ultimate aim in Hinduism, and but karma, that is the actions. So good actions or bad actions or evil actions, based on that you will have the experience of heaven or hell. And let's say there is no concept called hell in Hindu mythology. Okay, and see, it is believed that Yama is in hell, and he is the ruler of hell, and people who do all the evil activities Yama will take them and put in his hell. Okay, and but that is not the true, and Hindu mythology doesn't say so. And after the influence of Christianity only, they themselves created those stories. But let's say Yama is a person who Yama, with the help of Chitragupta, the accountant, an individual, each and every individual's calculations, the account of good and evil is done by Chitragupta. Okay, with his help, and he judges. Okay, he is a good person, he is a evil person. Likewise, Yama judges, and that is his duty. Okay, so Yama selflessly does the job of karma. Okay, so what all the karma and what all the good and evil and everything is judged by Yama. Okay, and he doesn't rule the place called Naraga, and Yama and Chitragupta will send the account to Shiva or Vaikunta, and based on that heaven is given. And if they don't get heaven, they will born again, maybe as insect or a bird or dog or whatever it may be, or even Deva or Asura, whatever it may be. Okay. So this is the idea about heaven and hell in Hindu mythology. So the conclusion is this: in Hinduism, flood is associated with natural happening and common, but in Christianity, flood is associated with destruction for unrighteous people. So this is flood is in Hindu mythology. Flood is a natural thing. Okay, and because of flood, people die. That is a common thing and common phenomena as per Hindu mythology. And Christian mythology, and it is a symbol of destruction, and the unrighteous people will die during flood. That's how flood is used in Bible and in Christianity. Okay, so that's the end of second chapter. We will move on to third chapter, that is transforming myth. Okay, so how myths are transformed from one generation to another generation, that we are going to discuss. And when we transform myth from one generation to another generation, let's say overall, let's say I guess Devdutt Pattanaik expect a reader to understand. That is what I am following. And what do I say overall about this book is that maximum Hindu mythology is similar to science. Okay, so it is and Hindu mythology and beyond science, Hindu mythology tries to find out the truth beyond science. Okay, and which could not be forever and ever, which could not be proved by science, but there are those truths which Hindu mythology wants to explore. Okay, and we are Hindu mythology is trying to find out the meaning of each and every ritual, the purpose of every individual, not only every individual, even living organism, even if it is a virus or bacteria, tiny creatures, and all things are given importance and the purpose, and what is the meaning of these creations, and accordingly we will have the meaning of life. So if you want heaven, you can do it. If you want moksha, you can do it. If you want to follow rules and regulations, you can follow it. If you do not want to follow, there is no need to follow it. Okay, so this is the idea of Hinduism, and this is what writer wants to know about Hindu religion. And so, okay, overall idea is this, and you can write in your notes also. Okay, the main idea of Hinduism. Okay, so what I have said so far. Okay, so there's nothing wrong in mentioning the point that Hindu mythology is more closer to science. Okay, so that's what he never mentions that Christianity is not closer to science, Islam is not closer to science. That such kind of mention is not there. Such kind of statements are not there in this book. But this is what Devdutt Pattanaik wants to make the readers understand. Hindu mythology is more close to science. That's what I feel. Okay, and what is the main purpose? And there is no rigid rules and regulations. That is another interesting thing that I understood after reading this book. Let's say they are all our psychological need. Okay, so if we do good things will happen to us. That is a belief and that is a faith. In reality, that is completely a contrasting one. But we shall all believe that we shall do good things and good things will happen to us. Okay, so unanimously, all Hindu religion, Christianity and Islam and everything believe in it. Hindu mythology also believe in it. But in case, even if doing good things and we are getting only evil things to us, it doesn't matter. Okay, this is an extra point given in Hindu mythology, which is not given in Christianity and in Islam. That's what I feel, and Devdutt Pattanaik also wants to say this. In Hindu mythology, a person is doing, Mahatma Gandhi did all kinds of good things to people, but he also faced a horrible death. Some children in coronavirus or many children also suffer without doing any sins. They are also common. Okay, such kind of maturity we all should have. Okay, so this is the main idea of Hindu mythology. And now we will explore, in this chapter we will explore how myths are transformed from one generation to another generation, and I mean the main idea of this chapter you have to mention. How myths are transformed from one generation to another generation, and in each age, in each period, what kind of controversies, what kind of problems they faced, and Hindu religion, Hindu mythology faced, and in those times the controversy developed within the Hindus themselves. Okay, which rule can we follow or not? Okay, so I think I mentioned raga. It's not yagas, it is yagnas. Yagnas, yagnas, yaga nadthiradhu. Okay, that is performing yagnas is actually a boring thing, and it is a completely superstitious belief. That is what my belief. And let's say 100 grams or 200 grams of ghee is put in the fire, and let's say beautiful clothes are put in the fire, and food, okay, let's say milk or fruits or vegetables and rice, everything is put in fire. Rather than putting all those things in fire, we can help those things to the poor people. Okay, so I strongly say, not only me, Devdutt Pattanaik and even modern Hindus, they all should believe that today in the modern age, yagnas are completely meaningless. Okay, so though the statement is not explicitly given, and but the implicit meaning is that in the modern context, yagnas are completely meaningless. Okay, so yaganatra. So there are many. Let's say there is a huge ground, and in that ground there is a fire altar, and they will enchant all the mantras and put all the food and basic things, even gold, even human beings. They are put, and believe that good things will happen to us. Okay, so this is the basement. Performing yagnas or basement in Hindu mythology. In those days, it was well acknowledged, and all people wanted to perform yagnas. So before going to wage a war against any countries, before a marriage, let's say today marriage, in marriage also not many fire altar is not there. There is only one fire altar before the couple in Hindu marriage, and only some oil is put today. But those days, food and all the things are put in that fire. Many altars would be there in marriage performance. Such things are not there. At least the altar is there, and some oil and unnecessary things only put in that altar, and mantras are enchanted, and the wedding couple is also enchanting a few mantras. And that's how Hindu marriage, not only marriage, in funeral, in all things, fire altar. That is, actually, yaga is with many priests, with many mantras, yagnas is performed. Okay, so what does those yagna, for what purpose we perform such yagnas, and how it changes from one generation to another generation? What kind of problems that they face? See, narrative symbols and rituals are meant to communicate with timeless truth, but they are also history. Okay, so rituals, symbols, and narratives are they are performed. Okay, Ramayanam, Mahabharatam, and let's say the rituals and symbols, and the star symbol and banana symbol and beetle leaf and various other things are given in the book. So we have to perform those things, and when we perform those things, it is believed that we communicate with timeless truth, we communicate with the cosmos. Okay, so it is a kind of belief, and not only that, they indicate history also. Okay, so they indicate history also. So in those days, this is how people performed. And let's say, we shall take Mahabharatam, and when we take Mahabharatam, polygamy was common. Okay, and at least women marrying a girl marrying five husbands was common. At least, but for kings and queens, they are all common. A queen can marry many men, and a king can marry many women. These things were common. Okay, and even let's say there is a couple and they don't have any children, and when this is the case, they can go to a Swamiji, and the wife can go for sexual intercourse with the Swamiji, and then she gets pregnant, and that child may become a king. Okay, so this is also a common thing. Okay, and let's say the sacrifice, and that's how people lived. That's how we have to understand it. Okay, so let's say there is a ritual in Hinduism, that is breaking a coconut or breaking a pumpkin. And in at the doorstep of any house, there will be a broken coconut or broken pumpkin, and they say that it is an example that when I let's say that is performed, let's say I want to become okay, I'm going to construct a school, okay, and I should earn more money by that. So I pray, I worship God, or worship Kubera or Vishnu, and then I break a pumpkin or a coconut. Okay. So when what symbolizes that when I want something, I have to give up something. Okay. So I should buy a coconut with my own money, and I unnecessarily break that coconut. So it is not useful for me. Indicating that yes, I am ready to sacrifice a coconut or anything to achieve one particular goal. Okay, so that is the meaning of it. So I buy a pumpkin, and it is if I am not going to use it, I simply break it at my doorstep, indicating that I am ready to sacrifice pumpkin, not only pumpkin or anything, to achieve my aim. I want something. Okay, I want to earn money. I want to buy a car. So to buy a car, I am going to sacrifice anything. Just buy. Okay, I want to buy a car. Oh Lord, please help me. I will sacrifice anything to buy a car. Okay, if this is the thing, okay, not only just for sake of prayer, and just in my mind, I'm not going to think. I'm going to sacrifice anything. Okay, so for symbolically, I sacrifice a coconut, or I sacrifice a pumpkin. Okay, so by that action, God can know that yes, this boy is ready to sacrifice anything, and therefore let me help him in achieving his aims or goals. Okay, so this is the idea. So then, as the age go on, and all people unanimously accepted this philosophy. Animals, even humans also were sacrificed. Okay, so indicating that yes, I am ready to sacrifice. We are ready to sacrifice this boy, this girl, and we want this aim. We want to conquer more country. Likewise, such kind of superstitious belief. Okay, don't make mention a word last superstitious belief. Such kind of belief, such human being sacrifice, or even goat and animal sacrifice were common during those time, indicating that I am ready to sacrifice anything to achieve this particular goal. Okay, so the thing or the living creatures or human being which is to be sacrificed, they have turmeric paste, manjal pusrad. Okay, if it is coconut or pumpkin or a goat or even human being or even a human, and the turmeric paste should be applied, and vermilion powder and soap. Such kind of rituals are done, and they should be done. The animal sacrifice and human sacrifice should be done with a single stroke, so that actually the animal and the human being should be ready to, yes, I am going to sacrifice my own life, so that you people can achieve your goals. I mean, that is what given here, and actually that is a wrong thing, but the nature of law is this: if you want to achieve something, we have to sacrifice something. We have to sacrifice what we have. Okay, so this is the nature. Okay, simply let's say you all want to get first mark, and for that you have to sacrifice your time with a mobile phone or watching movies, and you have to sacrifice those things. Without sacrificing and doing hard work, you will never be able to achieve your goal. Okay, so this is nature, this is the law. We have to accept this law. Okay, so without doing these rituals, we cannot understand the purpose of it, and you cannot follow the goal, your goal. Okay, so that's why something should be sacrificed. And when human sacrifice and animal sacrifice were become very popular, many scholars, many intellectuals, many genius people, yes, they are all completely meaningless. Okay, so this is not fair. Sacrificing human being is not fair, and even sacrificing animals, that is not at all going to be fair. Okay, and many people believe in it. Many people started to believe, and they violated. Yes, though it is the concept is right, and we cannot accept or tolerate human sacrifice or animal sacrifice. Many people started not to sacrifice those things when we want to achieve some goal. Okay, in worship yagnas they cannot be done. Okay, so yet at the same time this ritual, the fire altar yagna and prayer and worship continued. Okay, and moving to the next paragraph, March of Vedic Hymns, HYMNS, it is given in the book. So now we will talk about so okay, let me give you the introduction. Vedas, okay, general Vedas. Vedas is the foundation of Hinduism. Vedas is the foundation of Hinduism. That is the mantras. Okay, mantras enchanted in any Hindu temple. Okay, in Sanskrit language, such mantras are enchanted, and see, remember that they are not written in any books. Only in oral literature, only in the mouths of Brahmins, these mantras are there. Okay, and they are the real foundations in Hinduism. Okay, and the mantras has its own value, and let's say, I do not know how far it is true, but it is believed. Okay, so the mantras, the sound has its own power. Okay, let's say the most important sound, most important syllable of Hinduism, when we utter the syllable, this particular syllable, often disease is reduced, we get peace of mind, that is Om. Let's say, close your eyes, Om, 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 and say it in the heart, or using the mouth also, you say it, and I mean, you perform it, disease, you won't get any disease, and good things, you get concentrated mind, you are focused in your studies, and I do not know how far this is true, and especially all the Sanskrit mantras, if we perform those things, and many people strongly believe and say, after saying Om and all the mantras, I don't get any disease, and all things, all good things happen to me. And likewise, people say, of course, scientifically it could be disproved. Okay, so but it is believed. Okay, mantras is very important, and they are the foundations of Hindu religion, and yeah, it is believed that from rishis people got these Vedas. Okay, so doing mantras in yagnas, and good things will happen, and even an ordinary knife. Okay, if you take any ordinary weapon, if continuous mantras is enchanted on the weapon, the weapon become a divine weapon, and the weapon become powerful weapon. That is what believed. Okay, so performing in yagnas, we have to perform we have to enchant those Vedas or mantras, and we get a kind of aura or power when we chant in mantras, or when we the person who is enchanting the mantras, and we simply sit before them, we get power. Okay, so actually let's say the origin of Vedas is given here, and let me explain later. And actually from North India only Vedas evolved, and South Indians, they have their own gods, and they have their own belief, that is Tamil language, and but from North India only Vedas evolved, and slowly from North India Vedas spread to South India, and in South India some people accepted, yes, Vedas is powerful, and when I enchant Vedas, so I get some power. Some people believed in it, and some people did not believe in it. Okay, so this is the history. Okay, and so from North India to Vedas spread to South India, and in South India, South Indians, some South Indians believed in it, and half of the South Indians believed in it, and half of the rest of the population did not believe. No, Vedas don't power, you won't do it. Okay, so the gods which they prayed, South Indians, that is Tamilians prayed, is not, I mean, that is also Hinduism. And Vedas, doing Vedas and mantras, that is also Hinduism. Okay, so let's say I think this point is already explained. In Ramayanam, characters like Hanuman and Jataya are actually the character, Hanuman character and Jataya character, they are symbolic or personification of the people, the people who live in forest. Okay, Hanuman is not actually a real monkey. They are the people who live in forest. Jataya, that is a bird. The Jataya is not a real bird. It is a symbolic meaning or personification of people who live in forest. But their lifestyle is different. Their rules and regulations are completely different. Okay, so but this is the idea, and it is believed that when we live in forest, we get animal qualities. Okay, we get animal qualities, that is, we don't have a kind of discipline, and let's say morning we have to brush we have to brush our teeth, we have to take bath, and we have to sit and study. Such thing is not there in forest. Okay, whenever you want to brush your teeth, whenever you want to take bath, whenever you want to sleep, you can do whatever you want in forest. But in city, it is not done, and it is not acceptable. Okay, so whether city life and forest life, civilized life is what given in our book. So civilized life or forest life, whatever it may be, if it is believed that if we live in forest, we get animal qualities, which is not good for human beings. It is a belief, and it is not 100% true. Devdutt Pattanaik also says this. Okay, Hanuman is also a human being, but those people live in forest. Okay, so but Ramayanam strongly recommend that do not live in forest, lead a civilized life. Okay, so let me stop here. Thank you.